The restaurant fell completely silent the moment the single father looked up from the table and recognized the woman walking toward him. The polite smile he had forced onto his face vanished before she had even reached the chair across from him. Just 5 days earlier, she had stood at the front of a crowded conference room and announced the layoffs that shattered his family's future. She had never bothered to learn his name before firing him. Now she was sitting across from him on a blind date, completely unaware that the man holding the untouched glass of water was the employee whose little daughter had watched him pack his desk into a cardboard box. Neither of them had expected this meeting, but by the time the afternoon ended, both of their lives would change forever. If you believe kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances can change lives, please take a moment to like this video, leave a thoughtful comment, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community that believes compassion is always stronger than pride. Graham Mercer had never imagined his life would become so fragile. At 39, he was raising his 8-year-old daughter, Hazel, alone after losing his wife to a sudden illness 3 years earlier. Every morning before sunrise, he prepared breakfast, braided Hazel's light brown hair after watching dozens of online tutorials, packed her lunch with handwritten notes, and drove her to school before beginning his work as a senior maintenance engineer at a manufacturing company. His days were exhausting, but they were filled with purpose. Everything he did revolved around making sure Hazel never felt the weight of everything they had lost. She smiled often, laughed easily, and believed her father could fix absolutely anything. Graham treasured that belief more than any paycheck. The company where he worked had recently been purchased by a fast-growing technology corporation led by a celebrated young chief executive named Vivian Clark. Newspapers praised her intelligence and business instincts. Investors admired her fearless decisions. Employees, however, feared the changes that arrived almost immediately. Entire departments were reorganized. Budgets disappeared overnight. Long-serving workers found themselves answering to consultants who knew spreadsheets better than people. Graham tried to remain hopeful. He believed that hard work eventually spoke for itself. Then came the meeting that changed everything. Hundreds of employees gathered inside a bright conference hall during a quiet Tuesday morning. Vivian stood confidently at the front, explaining restructuring plans designed to increase efficiency and shareholder value. Names began appearing on the large screen behind her. Graham watched co-workers quietly lower their heads as each name appeared. Then his own appeared. No warning. No conversation. No explanation beyond corporate necessity. Within 20 minutes, 15 years of loyalty fit neatly into a cardboard box. Vivian never looked directly at him. Security staff politely escorted everyone toward the elevators while human resources representatives handed out envelopes describing severance packages. Graham carried the box with one arm while using the other to answer Hazel's cheerful afternoon call asking whether he would still make pancakes after school. He smiled through tears she could not see. He simply answered yes. For the next several days Graham searched endlessly for work. Interviews disappeared after employers learned dozens of experienced workers had entered the job market simultaneously. Bills continued arriving. Savings disappeared faster than he had imagined possible. He never allowed Hazel to see his fear. They continued eating breakfast together, visiting the park after school, reading stories in the sunshine, and pretending everything was perfectly normal. Meanwhile, Graham's older sister, Celeste, watched her brother slowly lose hope. Believing he deserved happiness despite everything, she secretly registered him with a local matchmaking service. Graham protested immediately when he discovered the appointment confirmation. He insisted he wasn't ready. He barely had enough money for groceries. Dating felt impossible. Celeste refused to listen. She reminded him that healing sometimes began with simple conversations between strangers. Reluctantly, Graham agreed. The blind date was arranged for a quiet afternoon at a peaceful cafe overlooking a botanical garden filled with blooming flowers and sunlight reflecting across small ponds. Graham arrived early wearing the same navy blazer he had worn to countless work meetings. It had once represented confidence. Now it simply reminded him of everything he had lost. He waited nervously, then Vivian Clark walked through the entrance. She froze as soon as she recognized him, her confidence disappeared instantly. the matchmaking coordinator had clearly made an unbelievable mistake. Neither moved for several seconds. Leaving seemed easier, yet both remained seated. The silence between them carried more weight than any argument ever could. Vivian quietly admitted she recognized him almost immediately after sitting down. She confessed she had not known his name during the restructuring meeting because hundreds of files had passed across her desk in only a few days. She explained that investors had demanded immediate cost reductions after discovering severe financial problems hidden by previous executives. None of those explanations erased Graham's pain that he listened politely but without warmth. Every sentence reminded him of Hazel asking whether everything would be okay. Every explanation sounded painfully distant from the real lives affected. Vivian noticed the worn edges of his wallet when he reached for the bill despite ordering only coffee. She noticed family photographs tucked inside. She noticed tired eyes that belonged to someone carrying responsibilities far beyond himself. For the first time since becoming chief executive, one terminated employee no longer looked like a personnel file, that he looked like a father. The conversation slowly changed. Instead of discussing business, they began speaking about life. Vivian revealed that success had come with enormous loneliness. Her parents had built successful companies but measured affection through achievements. Every mistake had been treated like failure. Every accomplishment simply raised expectations higher. She had spent her entire adult life believing emotions complicated leadership. Graham quietly explained that emotions were exactly what made leadership matter. Machines followed instructions, people carried invisible burdens. A single decision inside a boardroom echoed through kitchens, classrooms, hospitals, and family dinner tables. For the first time in years, Vivian found herself unable to defend her decisions. The date ended respectfully. Neither expected to meet again, yet Graham left with something unexpected, not forgiveness, understanding. Vivian left carrying something even heavier, responsibility. The following afternoon, while reviewing financial reports, Vivian found herself staring at employee records she had previously skimmed without thought. She opened dozens of personnel files and discovered stories hidden behind every photograph. Parents, caregivers, veterans, volunteers, employees supporting disabled spouses, workers paying university tuition for children. Numbers suddenly had faces. She requested a complete audit of every termination approved during the restructuring. The investigation uncovered something alarming. Outside consultants had recommended eliminating experienced staff based entirely on salary costs without evaluating their operational importance. Several critical maintenance specialists had been dismissed despite preventing millions of dollars in equipment failures each year. Graham had been one of them. Only days after his dismissal, production lines began experiencing repeated breakdowns. Emergency repair contractors charged enormous fees while delivery deadlines slipped dangerously behind schedule. The consultants insisted replacement workers would eventually adapt. Reality proved otherwise. Vivian drove personally to Graham's modest home during a sunny Saturday afternoon. She found him repairing Hazel's old bicycle in the driveway while laughing at her attempts to hand him the wrong tools. Their simple happiness stopped Vivian in her tracks. She realized this family had continued choosing joy despite everything she believed she had taken away. Hazel greeted the visitor warmly without recognizing her. Children often saw possibilities adults overlooked. Vivian apologized sincerely, not as a chief executive as a human being. She admitted she had hidden behind reports, percentages, and presentations because doing so protected her from confronting painful consequences. Meeting Graham had forced her to see every employee differently. She offered him his position back immediately, with higher pay, expanded authority, and a formal public apology. Graham surprised her that he did not answer immediately. Instead, he explained that trust was rebuilt through actions rather than words. He wanted assurance that no family would experience what his family had endured simply because their names appeared inside a spreadsheet. Vivian listened carefully. Over the following weeks she transformed company policies completely. Future layoffs required personal review. Managers received leadership training focused on empathy alongside performance. Employee support programs expanded dramatically. Financial decisions now considered long-term operational knowledge rather than salary alone. Only after witnessing those changes did Graham agree to return. His first day back looked nothing like his last day before leaving. Employees welcomed him warmly, many quietly thanked him without fully understanding why the company suddenly felt different. Vivian publicly accepted responsibility before the entire workforce, acknowledging that leadership demanded humility as much as intelligence. She specifically recognized Graham's courage for speaking honestly when resentment would have been easier. Months passed, the company recovered, employee morale reached levels investors had never predicted, productivity increased because people felt valued instead of disposable. Graham remained respected not only for his technical expertise but also for mentoring younger workers with patience and kindness. Vivian continued changing as well. She visited departments regularly instead of relying solely on executive reports. She learned employees' names, celebrated family milestones, and listened before making decisions. Her reputation evolved from brilliant but distant to strong and compassionate. Outside work, something quieter began growing. Occasional conversations became afternoon walks through the botanical gardens where their impossible first date had unfolded. Hazel adored feeding ducks while the adults discussed books, dreams, failures, and hopes. There were no grand declarations or dramatic moments. Trust returned slowly, exactly as Graham had promised it would. One bright spring afternoon nearly a year later, they found themselves sitting once again at the same cafe table where everything had begun. This time there was no bitterness hiding beneath polite conversation. There was gratitude. Neither pretended the past had never happened. Instead, they respected the difficult journey that had brought them there. Graham realized forgiveness had never meant forgetting the pain. It meant refusing to let pain define the future. Vivian understood that leadership was never about standing above others. It was about lifting people whenever possible, especially after making mistakes. Hazel looked at both of them while drawing pictures with colored pencils and smiled with the effortless wisdom children sometimes possess. Families, she believed, were built by people who chose to care for one another every single day. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment and tell us whether you believe forgiveness should always be earned through actions, or whether some mistakes can never truly be repaired. Your thoughts may encourage someone else who is carrying pain today. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that one unexpected meeting can change a life forever, but only if someone is brave enough to replace pride with compassion, judgment with understanding, and resentment with forgiveness. Sometimes the greatest second chance is not the one we receive, but the one we choose to give, and that single choice can become the beginning of a future brighter than either person ever imagined.